So, thank you. You may have noticed we've been making some changes and trying to get our sound right. And so, because I want you to hear these lovely voices and the music and all that, so we're getting there. Last week, some of you thought we were having technical difficulties, but it was really just a test. And so, because for those who were here, you may have noticed that I was speaking about when do we listen to the divine voice and when do we listen to the noise. So in fulfillment of that, I managed to have Howard Stern playing through the speakers as I was bringing the divine. And I just, it was a little test. Who did you listen to? So we're not going to do that every week because it's really annoying. But I think we've got that worked out. I was joking because once I used to, my first ministry in Dallas, Texas, we were set up in such a way, and I had a little lavalier mic, and for some reason, every once in a while, if I'd start talking like this and raise this hand, all of a sudden, I became an antenna for some local radio station and started channeling something, so it's always fun to deal with the gremlins that like to live in our sound systems. Today we're looking at, we've been working loosely from a wonderful book many of you have read, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And what he is helping us to understand, as Michael Beckwith is saying, is that we have the capacity to be free in any moment. That when we are spiritually aware and when we are untethered from our past conditioning, we simply experience life in the moment. And in the moment, we can experience fullness and joy and love and harmony and peace and our divine self. And so isn't that lovely? So just do that. Stop all this other stuff. But right, so we don't always do that, do we? You see, Albert Einstein said to us that, he said, our task must be to free ourselves from this prison of separation by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. It's Albert Einstein, scientist, right? But what he is saying to us is that we must expand our awareness and open our hearts to be compassionate, loving beings, to be aware of what is. What Michael Singer is helping us understand is that we can open our hearts. He explains, the way he explains it is like the heart is the processor of information. And so if you think when we're in a mindful state, we're just observant. We're noticing. We're experiencing tree, life, all good. And when we are in that state, we're peaceful and we're recognizing our wholeness. But we also have this part of us that gets conditioned. And so rather than just staying open and receiving and releasing information, we have these little attachments. Something happens and it hurts our feelings. And then sometime later, it just gets stored energy. And sometime later, something happens similar to what happened just 5 years ago, and you have a reaction based on who you were 5 years ago, not on who you are now. Isn't that weird? So the essential question, I think, for all of us is always, so who am I? Now, that's not a simple question. That is not a simple question. In fact, it's a great question. I remember a friend who was telling me about a retreat that they went on for 4 days, and that was the only question. Who am I? You see, if I were to ask you who you are, you might say, well, my name is, and I am accountant or a doctor or whatever, retired. We might speak to yourself as what you've done in the world. Or you might speak to the role that you play. I'm a mom or a dad or a son or a daughter, right? Or we might speak to the way we like to think, or we may speak to our experience of life. We may talk to our challenges. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a this or a that. You might even say, you might have an identity with your religious tradition. I'm Jewish or Catholic or a unitic, as I like to call us. Right? But those aren't who you are. Those are the essence clothed in other things. So this question of who am I is very fascinating. I've been thinking a lot about this. You see, what we would say over and over and over is we're spiritual beings. That who we are is an expression of the one life, the one power, the one divine essence. That the who I am is an individualized point of the divine, expressing in this world, having an experience of the world. But even, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, even when we lay this body down, goes on to say, and then we move to a new residence to inherit a new outfit afresh. We lay down this robe and take a new one when we move into another dimension. You see, there's some part of us that is who we are. And it showed up at 8 or 9 pounds some odd years ago, and then grew and changed and evolved and got taller and bigger and wider and wider. And, no, I'm speaking to myself, right? We changed, but the recognition of who you are, even though your body has changed over the years, remains the same. And so you could run into somebody that you haven't seen in 20 years and you go, there's Bob. He's changed, but I recognize him. So the essential spiritual truth is that we are divine beings and that we are having this human experience. Been working with this idea a lot. It's been floating through my mind that we're just spiritual beings in costume. Like we threw this big costume party. Let's go to Earth and throw a costume party. And I'm going to take on a costume. You know, have you ever been to a costume party? Anybody ever been to a costume party? Anybody ever been to a costume party that you kind of regret? Got a little too loose, got a little too into it? You don't have to raise your hand on that. We're not taking confession today. I'm just curious, right? Sometimes people really get into, like, I have this opportunity to be this other part of myself, and I'm just going to go for it. So we are the spiritual beings. We take on this costume, and then we forget that we're spiritual beings, and we think we're the costume. And we think that other people are their costume. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble. Been looking at this idea of race. Black History Month, there's some things going on in Virginia. There's this thing that keeps being with us around racial tension. I don't know if you knew this. Am I breaking news here? Right? And part of the problem that I see is that we don't talk about it in healthy and meaningful ways. We want to hide it. We want to say, well, not me, I'm enlightened. Right? And yet it's with us. Wraith and all of these things. So for me, here's what I wanted to talk about, because in doing I was thinking, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to quote from Johnny Coleman. Anybody know Johnny Coleman? So Johnny Coleman, this rock star of a minister, came through Unity. She, at one point, found out that she had 6 months to live, or 6 months before she died, however you want to look at that. And through a series of things, this silly magazine that her mom had always been giving her fell off the table, opened to a page. And of course, it was the Daily Word. And she read it, and she's like, what is this? But, you know, when somebody tells you you have 6 months to live, it has a way of getting your attention, right? Like Mary Morrissey says in one of her videos, she says, you know, she was talking to another speaker, and he said, you know, isn't it amazing when people come to you and they're like, I just found out I'm going to die. And he's like, this is breaking news to you? You didn't know? Right? We all are going to do it, right? None of us get out alive. But this idea of, right, what happens when we're shocked with our mortality, because there's some part of us that does want to believe that somehow we'll be different. You know, sure, all the 80 billion people that have gone before us have died, but somehow maybe I'll be different. But chances are really good you're not going to make it out alive. And so, but in those situations, a heart attack or a disease or something, or even a close call, all of a sudden you wake up. You go, wow, I don't have forever. What am I doing today to fulfill my life? Who am I right now? If this is the day, what do I want to do? I was cursed by losing my lover at 23 years old, at a time when people aren't supposed to be checking off the planet. Ultimately, it was the thing that led me into ministry because it totally messed with my preconceived ideas about what life was about. And so when we're dealing with that, then we start to look differently. So Johnny Coleman finds her way as an African-American woman to Unity. She was attracted to the teaching. She wanted to become a minister. And in those days at Unity Village, all of the ministerial students lived at the village and went to school. However, back in the 50s, the black students didn't live at the village. And so she got to live in Kansas City and drive in. Shocking. Right? Now, I say this not to say we're a bunch of racists and all that. I'm just saying that life in the 50s was different because even though we had these very evolved and awakened person, some of the consciousness was still with them. So one day, Johnny, in her demure and retiring little way, if you know Johnny, you'll appreciate that, said, this is BS. And if you don't let me live here, I quit. And she was a powerful enough force, and people recognized this is a spiritual presence amongst us. And so all of her students got together. They petitioned the school, and the school changed the rules, and she got to live at Unity Village in separate housing. Right? Now, again, not bashing, I'm just saying the thinking. Now, when you read the Unity story, it's like we had a breakthrough because now had removed segregation. We're done. So I always like to say, we had a black president. We're done. Right? Well, not so much. So, now, I say that not to diminish, but again, it was still that thinking. That's why when we remember who we are, spiritual beings, having a human experience, who have accumulated a belief system and a bias about life that unless we are really willing to do some deeper inner work can just guide our life. What Michael Singer is saying in The Untethered Soul is that we are conditioned, and so then we start to believe the conditioning. We believe the costume. And so our spiritual work, for me, is always getting beyond seeing and perceiving reality as I think it is. Now, Johnny Coleman then went on to found a new church in Chicago, and it became a big deal. 4,000 people. She then went on to become the president of the Association of Unity Churches. Right? So she stayed with it until there came a point where she needed to pursue ministry beyond the realms of what Unity was. So she just took her teaching, founded the Foundation for Better Living, trained ministers. At one point they had about 25 associated churches, all under the guise of this wonderful leadership of this person who was powerful, is powerful. So why would I share this? To make you uncomfortable. Because I believe discomfort is a good thing. Right? But no, it's just to look at the evolution. We're not bad people. We're just unconscious until we become more conscious. So what we are experiencing in our world today, of the vestiges of racial inequality, of gender issues, of the LGBT issues, women's rights, all of it just keeps moving forward until we get it, that we're all spiritual beings, that we're equal, and that we want to learn to look at what is in front of us and see beyond what is in front of us. In other words, can I see you? Not your costume, but your spiritual essence. I remember early in my career, this happened a couple of times, but I was selected to become the minister in Vancouver, BC. And then, after this process was underway, some people realized we're about to hire a gay dude. And so that was not a comfortable thing at that time. And so something happened, right? And it's all good. I ended up in Dallas, which is where I was supposed to be. But I remember thinking, well, isn't that interesting? Later, I took a ministry, and in that wonderful interview process that ministers get to go through, somebody said, well, we're not sure how our congregation will feel about having a gay minister. And I said, interesting. I said, first of all, I'm not coming to be your gay minister. In fact, I'm not even sure what that means exactly. Am I going to wear a boa on Sunday? What are you expecting here? Right? I said, I'm coming to be your minister, and one of the parts of my costume is I identify as a gay man. Right? So it's just, why would you think that costume matters? But you know what? It matters to some. And so for me, I remember, I'm talking a little different thing. So there's little things that trigger. So we carry with us in our heart the things that are unresolved. And so being a young man, knowing I was different before I knew what that difference meant, and feeling sort of terrorized in high school because I didn't want to be different, right? Nothing worse in high school than being different. And having that fear, and so as soon as I graduated from high school, I got the heck out of there, got the heck out of Dodge, right? So I could go figure out who I was. I didn't know that was what was driving the decision, but that was what was driving the decision. And so I haven't seen a lot of the people I went to high school, lovely people, they were wonderful, But then Facebook comes along, and now all of a sudden I'm reconnecting with these people that I went to high school decades ago. Let's just leave it at decades. We won't have to go into how many. And I find this little unresolved thing, like, oh my God, I'm going to have that conversation. Now, I'm not in the closet, in case you were wondering, right? This isn't my first announcement, right? But that unresolved childhood memory still sit in my heart, feeling like, will they accept me? As in high school, right? So, not a big deal. It's just, but I was aware of oh, look at that 40-year-old belief that still resides within me, and now it's up, and now it has the opportunity to heal. See, here's the good news. The good news is we carry these little things with us. And so often what we want to do is rather than address them, we want to put them down. That's why I said if we're not careful in New Thought teachings, we go with what I call the spiritual bypass. I don't want to feel what I'm feeling, so I'm just going to say some lofty and profound thing that God is all there is and all is well, which is true. And it's also a way that we can deny what we're feeling, right? So spiritual wisdom says, let it come forward. Now, Michael Singer says this wonderful thing. Just understand when that little blockage, as you might call it, got stored as a painful experience, when it's released or when it comes forward, it will come forward as a painful experience. Makes sense, right? It's that old phrase, garbage in, garbage out. Is that right, Jerry? Do you know that one? You're a tech guy, right? That if it went in as a painful experience, it will be released as a painful experience. And what too many of us do is we go, well, I don't want to feel pain again. So I'll avoid, or I'll hide, or I'll, medicate, or do whatever. But if I'm willing to just experience, it passes like that. It was just a thought. Isn't that amazing? We talk about this all the time, that our thoughts create our reality. And then we think our reality is real. And yet a thought created it. So a new thought could create something new. Isn't that amazing? So sometimes I feel like I'm going to get in trouble with the Science of Mind police or the Unity SWAT team or something that's going to swoop in and say, hey, you're talking about stuff other than God. It's all God. It's all part of our journey. For me, I believe that deep spiritual work is honoring the fullness of our humanness. And the fullness of our humanness is the mistakes we made about, not the mistakes we made, because we all made a few. I try and make 2 a day just to stay on track. But, right, the problem is not the mistakes we made. The problem is not, it's the mistakes in our thinking. You see, the idea of addiction is actually, I now know this is a mistake, and I'm going to do it again. Right? So the alcoholic says, alcohol and I do not fit, I think I'll drink. You're right? Whatever your addiction is, choose yours, right? Is when it becomes the thing that is impeding your life, and we keep doing it, that's a good sign that you have an addiction. And to some degree or another, we all do. Welcome to our humanness. But if we're not working to medicate or to dull that and willing to just experience the feeling, what we feel is that that's it. Jesus taught us the art of this. He taught us, I believe, that there's a spiritual essence to who we are. And so when people went to him for healing, I don't think he was fixing their brokenness, but rather seeing their spiritual wholeness. And when you see the spiritual wholeness and you move into agreement with that, that is where the healing occurs. Right? That is where the healing occurs. We have a mindset in our world that we can fix the problem at the level of the problem. Right? Especially guys. They like to fix stuff. Right? That we can fix the problem at the level of the problem. And so we say, let's heal racism by having some kind of a thing instead of some kind of a thing. Right? Learning to perceive reality differently. Learning, gathering those amongst us who perceive reality differently. When I was asked if I was going to start, in school they said, are you going to start a gay ministry? Yes. And it's going to be fabulous. There will be Broadway shows. And I remember saying, that's the last thing I want to do. How boring would that be? Right? I like the diversity of who we are. I get that we're all in costumes, and I like as many different types of costumes in the room as possible. Right? I don't want to go to a costume party and have everybody wear the same outfit. Boring. I want to go where people have purple hair for no apparent reason. Right? And sing like angels and who they are. I mean, whatever it is. Whatever it is. It's just a costume. So when we're spiritually aware and making that the priority, then a lot of this other stuff falls away. But we want to be mindful. We want to be mindful. So in looking at the story, I was really kind of touched by Johnny Coleman and just, her staying with doing what it was hers to do. And ultimately, when the structure didn't fit for what she needed to do, she found a structure that worked. Right? It doesn't make unity bad for being in the 50s. A lot of people were stupid in the 50s, right? A lot of people right now, but we keep evolving. Hopefully we keep evolving. And we stop confusing the costume for who we are. When Krishna is speaking to his student, he's saying there's a part of you that is deathless and eternal and connected with the source. And that even when you lay down this set of robes, you'll move into a new residence and inherit new clothing. When the Fillmores were teaching us these powerful teachings, they were saying, you, my dearly beloveds, are divine beings. And you have the capacity of thought. And you have the capacity of choice. And you have the capacity to co-create with the divine according to your wisdom. So let us gain wisdom. It's exciting. We in this community and this way of thinking, we don't try and solve the problem at the level of the problem. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but when you do, you just create new problems. What's the problem here? Let's fix that problem. Oh, we just created 3 more. I used to say when I did consulting, it's good for me. Keeps kind of go in, help organizations straighten out their issue. And then, they'll create some new ones. I can come back 6 months. It's that ongoing thing. But I like to work at the level of what do I need to know? Who do I need to become? What do I need to be remembered? You see, every situation in our life is an opportunity for us to remember the truth of who we are. Finances aren't working. It's an opportunity to remember where our source comes from and open the channels through which that good can be revealed. The solution is not in getting more money. Without the healing of the inner, we just create new issues in the outer. Whether it's in relationships. Oh, happy Valentine's Day, by the way. Just couldn't do that one today. Right? You don't find loving relationships necessarily by going and getting a new relationship. Unless what was messed up the old one was healed. Right? Some of us have evidence of said story. So our work, my friends, is that remembrance of who we are, of practicing these spiritual principles, of knowing that life is simply unfolding. Jesus said to us, it is the Father's, his power's good pleasure to give us all of this. But he also said, so seek first that spiritual consciousness, and then all these things are added unto you. We can gather things all day long and may never move into a consciousness of what we desire. So I share with you this journey. To me, it's helpful to look at, to know we're not a part of a perfect organization. We're part of an evolving organization. I'd like you to know I'm not a perfect person. I'm an evolving person. The Spirit's not perfect, right? We all are. One of the challenges with church sometimes is that we want to put on the spiritual costume. I got it all together, so I can show up here and don't judge my consciousness. Instead of going, here's where I am, but I want to grow. I want to evolve. I'm going to look. See, I believe if you just look at the problem, it's okay. And then you look beyond it, and then you know the truth. And when you know the truth, it is what sets us free. So today is the day, as Michael Beckwith said, in any moment, that we can choose freedom. And we can choose freedom by recognizing the level of thinking where we're at, choose mindfulness, and be empowered. It's a good day. Let us pray. As we deepen in that understanding of the truth of who we are, remembering and realizing our spiritual essence, our spiritual heart, we open it widely. We experience love and compassion and joy and wisdom, all of those divine gifts that have been freely given. In the remembrance of who we are, we realize we are not separate from the divine, but rather the extension of the divine. And so we surrender, opening to that divine wisdom and intelligence to be expressed more fully through us. We release those limiting beliefs gently and lovingly, but we let them go, for they no longer serve us. And we step into the spiritual truth and reality of who we are. We claim for ourselves wholeness as perfect health and well-being. We claim for ourselves love in its fullness of expression. We claim for ourselves unconditional forgiveness for ourselves and for others. We claim for ourselves abundance and wisdom and joy and harmony. For we are divine beings accepting what is the Father's good pleasure to give us. Knowing the power of the word spoken, and knowing the power of this universal intelligence, I'm simply releasing this word, knowing that it goes forth as a blessing to all. We bless this spiritual community, this divine idea, unfolding and evolving. We bless our brothers and sisters, that we move to that state of awareness that recognizes our commonness, our oneness, and celebrates the diversity of costumes that we wear. We bless all priests, all rabbis, all ministers, all teachers of all faiths, where we celebrate there are many pathways to the divine. We honor and celebrate them all. So for all of these blessings, and so many more, I'm simply giving thanks. I am speaking this word into that Christ mind, into that divine law, knowing that it is so, knowing that it is good and very good. And so in joy and gratitude, I simply allow it to be so, as together we say, and so it is. Amen.